My name is Rosa, and I am 56 years old. For 30 years, I raised my daughter alone, giving her everything I had. I thought we were building a life together, a future where family meant something. But one text message changed everything. It was supposed to be a simple vacation to Cabo, but what happened instead taught me the hardest lesson about boundaries, respect, and knowing when to walk away. Before I tell you what happened, I would love to know where you are watching from. If you have ever felt taken for granted by someone you love, go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe, because this story is about standing up for yourself when no one else will. Now let me tell you how a single text message taught me the hardest lesson about boundaries and respect. I have been a single mother since my daughter Stephanie was 3 years old. Her father Frank walked out on us without looking back, without sending a single check, without even a phone call on her birthday. From that moment, it was just the two of us against the world. I worked as a real estate agent in Phoenix, Arizona, and let me tell you, those were not easy years. I worked late nights and weekends showing houses when other mothers were tucking their children into bed. I missed school plays because I had to close deals. I ate ramen noodles for dinner so Stephanie could have fresh fruit in her lunchbox. But I never complained, not once, because when I looked at my little girl with her bright eyes and hopeful smile, I knew every sacrifice was worth it. I put her through school, paid for her field trips, bought her prom dress, and when it came time for college, I made sure she could go without drowning in debt. Stephanie wanted to be a nurse, and I was so proud of her. I paid every semester, every textbook, every lab fee. When she graduated with her nursing degree, I cried tears of joy. My baby girl had made it. Life was not glamorous for me, but it was good enough. I worked hard, built a decent career, and after many years, I finally had some savings. I owned my own home, a modest 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood. I had enough put away for retirement, maybe even a little travel. But the truth is, I was lonely. Stephanie was my whole world, and as she grew older and built her own life, I felt that distance growing between us. 3 years ago, Stephanie met Kyle. He worked as a sales manager at some tech company, always dressed sharp, always talking about deals and numbers. I tried to like him. I really did. He was polite enough at first, shaking my hand, calling me ma'am, but there was something cold in his eyes, something that made me feel like I was being measured and found lacking. His family was well off. His father, George, owned a chain of car dealerships across Arizona. His mother, Patricia, was the kind of woman who wore pearls to brunch and looked down her nose at anyone who worked for a living. I remember the first time I met them at a restaurant Stephanie had chosen for our families to meet. Patricia barely looked at me when we were introduced. George asked what I did for work, and when I said real estate, he nodded like I had just told him I cleaned houses. They spent the whole dinner talking about their country club, their vacation home in San Diego, and how Kyle was destined for great things. I sat there smiling, trying to be gracious, but inside I felt small. 2 years ago, Stephanie and Kyle got married. It was a beautiful wedding, I will give them that. Stephanie looked like a princess in her white gown, and Kyle looked handsome in his tuxedo. But here is the thing that still stings when I think about it. I paid for that wedding. Every single penny. The venue, the flowers, the catering, the photographer, the band. It all came out of my savings. Close to $40,000. George and Patricia contributed nothing. Not a dime. But they sat in the front row like royalty, accepting compliments on how lovely everything was. When I handed Stephanie the final check to cover the remaining costs, she hugged me and said thank you. But there was something different in her hug. It felt more like obligation than gratitude. Still, I pushed that feeling aside. She was starting a new chapter in her life. Of course, things would be different. After the wedding, Stephanie and Kyle moved into a rental apartment in Tempe. They seemed happy enough, and I tried to give them space. But I noticed Stephanie called less often. Our weekly coffee dates became monthly, then every few months. When I suggested getting together, she always had an excuse. She was working extra shifts. Kyle had plans with his family. They were busy with house projects. Always something. Then in February of this year, my phone rang. It was Stephanie, and she sounded excited, more animated than I had heard her in months. "Mom," she said, "Kyle and I have been looking at houses. We found the perfect one. It is in Tempe, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, beautiful backyard. We want to start a family and we need a real home." My heart swelled with happiness. A grandchild. The thought filled me with warmth. "Of course, honey," I said. "That is wonderful news." She went on to tell me about the house, how it was listed at $350,000, how she and Kyle had saved enough for a down payment of $70,000. But then she paused, and I heard the shift in her voice. "Mom," she said slowly, "we need help with the rest." I should have asked more questions right then. I should have said, "Let me think about it." But instead, I said what I always said to my daughter. "How much do you need?" Stephanie explained that if I could cover the remaining $280,000, they could own the house outright. Kyle would pay me back over time, she assured me. They would draw up an agreement, make monthly payments, whatever I needed. I sat there with the phone pressed to my ear, doing the math in my head. $280,000. That was almost everything I had saved. My retirement fund, my emergency money, my security. But then I thought about Stephanie, about the baby she would have, about giving my grandchild a stable home. I thought about all the years I had worked, all the sacrifices I had made. What was it all for if not for this, if not to help my daughter build a good life? "Okay," I said. "I will do it." Stephanie squealed with delight. "Oh, Mom, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You are the best. I am so lucky to have you. We will make you so proud. I will never forget this." Those words echoed in my mind for days. I will never forget this. At the time, I thought she meant it as a promise. I had no idea it would turn into something else entirely. I thought I was investing in my daughter's future, in my grandchild's future, in our family. I had no idea I was buying my own heartbreak. The process of buying the house moved quickly, too quickly looking back. I met with my lawyer, Barbara Walsh, a sharp woman in her 60s who had handled real estate deals for me before. She knew I was planning to help Stephanie, and when I told her the amount, her eyebrows shot up. "Rosa," she said, leaning forward across her desk, "that is a lot of money. You need to protect yourself." "I know," I said, "but it is for my daughter." Barbara nodded slowly. "I understand. But let me suggest something. Put your name on the deed along with Stephanie and Kyle. Be a co-owner until they pay you back. That way, if anything goes wrong, you have legal protection." I hesitated. The idea of putting my name on the deed felt like I was saying I did not trust my own daughter. But Barbara was insistent. "Rosa, this is just smart business. It is not about trust. It is about protecting a significant investment. You worked your whole life for this money. Do not give it away without safeguards." In the end, I agreed. When I told Stephanie about the arrangement, I could hear the disappointment in her voice. "Mom," she said, "do not. You trust us?" "Of course I do," I replied quickly. "It is just a formality, honey. Once you pay me back, we will transfer it completely to you and Kyle." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Okay," in a flat tone that made my stomach twist. Kyle, I later learned, was even less pleased. But they needed the money, so they accepted the terms. I transferred $280,000 into the escrow account. I watched my savings account shrink to almost nothing. For a moment, I felt a wave of panic. What had I just done? But then I thought about Stephanie, about her happiness, and I pushed the fear away. In March, the deal closed. The house officially belonged to all three of us: Rosa Martinez, Stephanie Martinez Thompson, and Kyle Thompson. I drove over to the house on the day they got the keys. Stephanie met me at the door, and for a moment she looked like my little girl again. "Thank you, Mom," she said, and she hugged me. Kyle appeared behind her holding boxes. "Thanks, Rosa," he said, but his smile did not reach his eyes. I spent the afternoon helping them unpack arranging dishes in cabinets hanging curtains, but the whole time I felt like an outsider. Kyle kept directing Stephanie to do things differently, moving furniture I had just helped place. When I suggested where to put the couch, he smiled tightly and said, "We have got it handled, Rosa." I left that evening feeling unsettled. Something was off, but I could not put my finger on it. Over the next few weeks, I tried to visit to check on how they were settling in, but every time I called, Stephanie said they were busy. When I dropped by unannounced one Saturday, Kyle answered the door in gym shorts, clearly not expecting anyone. "Rosa," he said, not moving from the doorway. "You should really call first." "Oh," I said, holding up a casserole dish. "I just wanted to bring you dinner." Kyle took the dish but did not invite me inside. "Thanks," he said. "We appreciate it." Then he closed the door. I stood there on the porch staring at the closed door, feeling a coldness spread through my chest. I walked back to my car and sat there for a long moment. Through the front window, I could see Stephanie moving around the kitchen. She had to have heard me arrive. She had to have known I was at the door. But she had not come out to say hello. That was when I first felt it, that terrible sinking feeling that something had shifted between us. But I told myself I was being overly sensitive. They were newlyweds building their life. I needed to give them space. April passed in a blur of polite text messages and short phone calls. I would ask about the house and Stephanie would say it was great. I would suggest lunch and she would say maybe next week. May arrived and with it a shift in the weather. Phoenix started heating up, the kind of dry heat that made you want to escape somewhere cool. That was when Stephanie called with news about the trip. "Mom," she said, her voice bright. "Kyle and I are planning a vacation. We are going to Cabo San Lucas in June. A whole week at a resort. I am so excited." "That sounds wonderful, honey," I said, genuinely happy for her. "You two deserve a break." "Yeah," she continued. "Kyle's parents are coming too. They are paying for the resort. It is going to be a really nice family trip." Family trip. The words hung in the air. I waited for her to say more, to extend an invitation, but there was only silence. "Oh," I finally said. "That sounds nice." We chatted for a few more minutes and then she had to go. I hung up feeling hollow. A family trip, but I was not invited. I tried to tell myself it was fine. They wanted time with Kyle's family. I did not need to be included in everything. But it hurt. It hurt more than I wanted to admit. A few days later, I received an email from Stephanie. The subject line read, "Cabo trip details." I opened it expecting maybe some photos of the resort or a note saying, "Wish you were here." Instead, it was a full itinerary. Flight times, hotel name, dinner reservations, excursion bookings. And at the top, a list of attendees: Kyle Thompson, Stephanie Martinez Thompson, George Thompson, Patricia Thompson, Derek Thompson, Amanda Thompson. 6 names: Kyle, Stephanie, Kyle's parents, and Kyle's brother and sister-in-law. No Rosa Martinez. I stared at the email, reading it over and over as if the words might change. Why had she sent this to me? Was it a mistake I texted her? "Got your email. Looks like a great trip," she replied an hour later. "Oh yeah, just wanted to keep you in the loop." I hesitated, then typed, "Am I not going?" 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, her response came. "It is just for Kyle's family, Mom. A bonding thing. I will call you when we get back." I sat with my phone in my hand, feeling like I had been slapped. Just for Kyle's family. As if I was not her family. As if 30 years of raising her alone, of sacrificing everything, meant nothing. I wanted to call her to ask what she meant, but something stopped me. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was fear. Instead, I set the phone down and tried to go about my day, but the hurt sat in my chest like a stone. The next few weeks passed in a haze. I went to work, showed houses, smiled at clients, but inside I was unraveling. Every time I thought about that email about those 6 names that did not include mine, I felt the hurt deepen. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe Kyle's family wanted private time. Maybe Stephanie felt caught in the middle. Maybe I was overreacting. But no matter how I framed it, the message was clear. I was not part of their family. On a Thursday night in late May, I could not take it anymore. I needed to understand what was happening. I picked up my phone and scrolled through Stephanie's social media. She had posted photos from a dinner at Kyle's parents' house. There was Stephanie smiling beside Patricia, who had her arm around my daughter like she was her own. There was Kyle and his father holding glasses of wine, looking pleased. The caption read, "So blessed to have such an amazing family. Love these people." I stared at the word family. She had used it so casually, so easily to describe Kyle's relatives. But when it came to me, her own mother, I was not family enough to join a vacation. I closed the app and sat in the darkness of my living room. Memories flooded back. Stephanie at 6 holding my hand on her first day of school. Stephanie at 12 crying on my shoulder after her first heartbreak. Stephanie at 18 hugging me on graduation day, whispering, "Thank you for everything, Mom." Where had that girl gone? The answer, I realized, was that she had not gone anywhere. She had simply grown up and decided I was no longer useful. I had served my purpose. I had raised her, educated her, paid for her wedding, bought her a house. And now that Kyle's family could offer her country clubs and luxury vacations, I was obsolete. The thought made me feel sick. Had I raised a daughter who valued money and status over loyalty and love, or had I simply been blind to who she was becoming? Friday morning, June 2nd. I woke up with a knot in my stomach. It was the day Stephanie and Kyle were leaving for Cabo. I knew their flight was at noon. Part of me wanted to text her to wish her a safe trip, to play the role of the gracious, understanding mother, but another part of me could not bring myself to do it. Why should I make this easier for her? Why should I pretend this did not hurt? At 10 in the morning, my phone buzzed. A text from Stephanie. I opened it, my heart pounding. "Mom, I need to tell you something. You will not be joining us on the Cabo trip. Kyle wants only his family there. I hope you understand. We will talk when I get back." I read the message 3 times. Each time the words felt like a knife twisting deeper. You will not be joining us. As if I had ever been invited. As if I had been planning to show up. Kyle wants only his family. Only his family. Not me. Not the woman who had given up everything to raise the woman he married. My hands shook as I typed a response. I was not planning to join. But Stephanie, I am your mother. Am I not your family? I hit send and waited. The 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. 5 minutes passed. 10. 20. No response. I called her. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. She had silenced me literally and figuratively. I sent another text. We need to talk about this. Again, no response. She was done with me. She had said what she needed to say, and now she was off to Cabo with her real family. I sat on my couch, phone in hand, and felt something inside me break. Not the kind of break that shatters loudly, but the quiet kind, the kind that happens when you finally accept a truth you have been avoiding. My daughter did not value me. She valued what I could give her. And now that I had given her everything, I was disposable. The pain was overwhelming. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But instead, I just sat there in silence, feeling the weight of 30 years of sacrifice pressing down on me. Then slowly the pain began to transform into something else. Anger. Cold, clear anger. How dare she? How dare she treat me like this after everything I had done? How dare she exclude me, dismiss me, discard me? And for what? For a man who looked down on me, for a family that thought I was beneath them? No. I was done being the doormat. I was done being the mother who gave and received nothing but disrespect in return. If Stephanie wanted to make it clear I was not family, then fine. I would act accordingly. I stood up, grabbed my laptop, and opened my files. I pulled out the deed to the house. There it was in black and white. 3 names: Rosa Martinez, Stephanie Martinez Thompson, Kyle Thompson. I was still a co-owner. They had never paid me a single dollar back. There was no written agreement, no contract, no legal obligation for them to repay me. It had all been based on trust, on family, on love. Well, family goes both ways, and if I was not their family, then I had no obligation to them either. I picked up my phone and called Barbara Walsh. "Barbara," I said when she answered, "I need your help. It is about the house." There was a pause. "What is going on, Rosa?" I took a deep breath. I want to take action. I want to protect my investment, because apparently I am not family anymore. Barbara asked me to come to her office that afternoon. I drove there with my jaw clenched, my mind racing. By the time I walked into her office, I had made up my mind. I was not going to be a victim. I was going to take control. Barbara greeted me with a concerned look. "Sit down, Rosa. Tell me everything." So I did. I told her about the text message about being excluded, about the years of being pushed aside by Kyle and his family. I told her how Stephanie had changed, how she had become someone I barely recognized, and I told her that I was done. Barbara listened carefully, taking notes. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. "Okay," she said. "Let me explain your options. You are a co-owner of the property. Stephanie and Kyle have not paid you back, and there is no written repayment agreement. Legally, you have several options. You could file for a partition sale, which would force the property to be sold and the proceeds divided, but that takes time and court involvement. Another option is to negotiate directly with them, demand immediate repayment, or threaten legal action." I shook my head. They are on vacation. They are unreachable. And frankly, I do not want to negotiate. What else can I do? Barbara hesitated. There is a faster, more aggressive approach. You could find a buyer, sell your interest in the property, and essentially force them out. If you act quickly while they are gone, you could have the sale completed before they even return. But Rosa, this is extreme. This will destroy your relationship with your daughter. I looked Barbara in the eye. She already destroyed it. I just did not realize it until now. Barbara nodded slowly. All right, if you are sure I can help you. But we need to move fast. They will be gone for a week, right? I nodded. Their flight back is next Friday. Barbara pulled out a calendar. That gives us 6 days. We need an appraiser, a buyer willing to close quickly, and all the legal paperwork in order. It is a tight timeline, but it is doable. Do you know any cash buyers? I thought for a moment. Yes, I said. I know an investor named Harold Brennan. He buys properties quickly, usually for flips or rentals. I will call him. Barbara made a note. Good. I will start drafting the paperwork. But Rosa, one more time, are you absolutely certain about this? Once we start, there is no going back. I thought about Stephanie's text. I thought about the years I had given her, the money I had spent, the love I had poured into her, and I thought about how easily she had tossed me aside. Yes, I said firmly. I am certain. That afternoon I called Harold. Harold, I said, I have a property that needs to sell fast. Are you interested? He was intrigued. Tell me about it. I explained the situation, leaving out the personal details. 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house in Tempe, appraised at $365,000. I need to close within a week. Harold whistled. A week? That is tight. I will need a discount for that kind of turnaround. How much? I asked. He thought for a moment. I can do $355,000 cash close in 5 days. I did the math quickly. $355,000 minus the original down payment of $70,000 that Stephanie and Kyle had put in left $285,000. I had contributed $280,000. I would get my money back plus $5,000. It was not about profit. It was about principle. Deal, I said. Harold agreed to have his lawyer draw up the papers. Within hours, things were in motion. Barbara worked late into the night preparing the legal documents. By Saturday morning, we had everything ready. The appraiser came out and confirmed the value. Harold's lawyer reviewed the sale agreement. Everything was moving faster than I had imagined. On Sunday, I received an email from Barbara. Rosa, technically Stephanie and Kyle have a right of first refusal as co-owners. They could match Harold's offer if they wanted. But since they are out of the country and unreachable, we can proceed. By the time they find out, the sale will be complete. I stared at the email. This was really happening. I was really doing this. And I felt no guilt, only a strange sense of calm. For years, I had bent over backward to make Stephanie happy, to give her everything she needed. And where had it gotten me, cast aside like I meant nothing? Well, no more. I was taking back what was mine. Monday and Tuesday passed in a blur of paperwork and phone calls. Harold transferred the funds. The title company processed the sale. By Wednesday, we were ready to close. On Thursday morning, I met Harold and his lawyer at the title company. We signed the final documents. Harold handed me a check for $355,000. I stared at it, feeling the weight of what I had just done. The house no longer belonged to Stephanie and Kyle. It belonged to Harold. Harold shook my hand. Pleasure doing business with you, Rosa. I know this was personal, so I hope everything works out. I nodded, unable to speak. As I left the title company, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, sadness, anger. But most of all, I felt free. I was no longer tied to people who did not value me. That afternoon, I called a locksmith. I explained the situation and asked if he could change the locks on the house immediately. He agreed. By 5 p.m, every lock on the property had been changed. The front door, the back door, the garage. Stephanie and Kyle's keys were now useless. I stood in the empty house one last time, looking around at the furniture, the pictures on the walls, the life they had built. And I felt nothing. No regret, no second thoughts. Just a cold, clear certainty that I had done the right thing. I pulled out a piece of paper and began to write. Stephanie and Kyle, by the time you read this, you will have realized your keys no longer work. That is because the house has been sold. I was a co-owner, and since there was no repayment agreement and you made it clear I am not part of your family, I exercised my legal right to sell my interest in the property. The new owner is Harold Brennan. His contact information is below. You will need to arrange with him to retrieve your belongings. I hope the trip to Cabo with your real family was worth it. Rosa. I placed the letter on the kitchen counter along with the old keys that no longer worked. Then I walked out, locked the door behind me, and drove away. I did not look back. Friday arrived. The day Stephanie and Kyle were supposed to return from Cabo. I knew their flight landed at 4 in the afternoon. I stayed home waiting. I did not know what to expect, but I knew it was coming. At 6 in the evening, my phone rang. Stephanie. I let it ring. I was not ready to talk to her yet. The call went to voicemail. A minute later, another call. I ignored it again. Then a voicemail notification popped up. I played it. Mom. Stephanie's voice was shaking. What the hell did you do? Our keys do not work. There are new locks. Call me back right now. I deleted the voicemail. Another call came through, this time from Kyle. I ignored it. His voicemail was angrier. Rosa, this is illegal. You cannot just sell our house. We are calling the police. I almost laughed. Calling the police? For what? Everything I had done was completely legal. I was a co-owner. There was no written contract. I had every right to sell my share. The police would tell them it was a civil matter, not a criminal one. Text messages started flooding in. Stephanie sent a dozen in a row. How could you do this? Where are we supposed to live? You are my mother. I cannot believe you would betray me like this. This is insane. Mom, please, answer me. I read each one feeling nothing, or maybe feeling everything but from a distance, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. Then another text. We are coming to your house. We need to talk. I felt a spike of anger. No, they did not get to show up at my door and demand anything from me. I typed back my first response since the initial text a week ago. No, you made it clear I am not your family, so we have nothing to discuss. Stephanie replied immediately. Mom, please. I am sorry about the text. I did not mean it. I took a breath and typed carefully. Yes, you did. And now I have acted accordingly. The house is sold. Harold Brennan owns it now. Your belongings are still inside. Contact Harold to arrange pickup. His number is in the letter I left. Stephanie. You cannot do this. Me, I already did. You wanted Kyle's family only. Now you have them. Good luck. Stephanie. This is not fair. Me. Neither is being told I am not family after giving you everything. Goodbye, Stephanie. And then I did something I never thought I would do. I blocked her number. I blocked Kyle's number. I blocked them both from my phone, from my life. I turned off my phone completely and sat in the silence of my living room. For the first time in weeks, I felt at peace. The weight that had been pressing on my chest was gone. I had stood up for myself. I had drawn a boundary. I had said no, and it felt powerful. That night I slept better than I had in months. No nightmares, no anxiety, just deep, dreamless sleep. When I woke up the next morning, I felt lighter. I knew there would be fallout. I knew people would judge me, but I also knew I had done what I needed to do. I had spent 30 years putting Stephanie first, sacrificing my own needs, my own happiness, my own security. And in the end, she had thrown it all back in my face. Well, no more. I was done being a doormat. I was done being taken for granted. I was finally putting myself first. The weekend passed quietly. I kept my phone off, not ready to face whatever storm was brewing. On Monday, I turned it back on. Immediately, it buzzed with notifications, missed calls, voicemails, text messages, but none from Stephanie or Kyle since I had blocked them. Instead, there was a call from an unknown number. I listened to the voicemail. It was George Kyle's father. His voice was cold and furious. "What kind of mother are you, kicking your own daughter out of her home? You are a disgrace. We will be taking legal action. Mark my words." I felt a flicker of anger but pushed it down. Let them try. I had done everything by the book. Barbara had made sure of that. I called her to let her know about George's threat. She laughed, actually laughed. "Rosa, they have no case. You were a legal co-owner. There was no written agreement. You had every right to sell. If they take you to court, they will lose and waste money on lawyers. Tell them to talk to their attorney. They will get the same answer." I felt reassured. Whatever George wanted to do, I was protected. A few days later, I received a call from Barbara. "Rosa," she said, "I got a call from a lawyer representing Stephanie and Kyle. They are threatening to sue you for the return of their down payment." I felt my stomach drop. "Can they do that?" Barbara sighed. "They can try, but honestly, they do not have much of a case. The down payment was their contribution to the purchase. When the house sold, the proceeds were distributed according to ownership. You put in $280,000, they put in $70,000. You got back your share plus a small amount. They are arguing they should get their $70,000 back, but since you were all co-owners and the sale was legal, it is complicated. My advice, offer them a settlement. Give them back part of the down payment, maybe $40,000 or $50,000, just to make this go away." I thought about it. Part of me wanted to fight to refuse to give them anything, but another part of me just wanted it to be over. "Fine," I said. "I will give them $40,000. Draw up the paperwork." Barbara agreed. A week later, a settlement was reached. I would pay Stephanie and Kyle $40,000, and in return they would drop any legal claims against me. It was less than their original down payment, but it was something. I signed the papers and transferred the money, and just like that, it was done. Legally, financially, completely done. But emotionally, that was a different story. 2 weeks after the Cabo trip, I received a letter in the mail. Not an email, but an actual handwritten letter. I recognized Stephanie's handwriting on the envelope. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a 3-page letter. She wrote about how sorry she was, how Kyle had pressured her, how she felt caught between me and his family. She wrote about how she never thought I would actually sell the house, how she was shocked and hurt. She wrote that they were now living in a cramped apartment, that they had lost all their savings, that their marriage was strained because of financial stress. And then at the end, she wrote, "Mom, I know I messed up, but selling the house, that was too far. You destroyed my life over one text message. I cannot forgive you for that." I read the letter twice, then folded it and put it back in the envelope. There was a time when her words would have gutted me, when I would have second-guessed everything I had done. But that time was over. She thought I had destroyed her life over one text message. No, it was not one text. It was years of being pushed aside, years of being undervalued, years of giving everything and receiving nothing but disrespect in return. The text was just the final straw. I did not respond to the letter. There was nothing to say. Stephanie had made her choice, and I had made mine. A month later, I ran into an old friend at the grocery store. She had heard about what happened through the grapevine. Small town syndrome, even in a city like Phoenix. "Rosa," she said, touching my arm. "I heard about you and Stephanie. I am so sorry. Are you doing okay?" I smiled a real smile. "Actually, I said I am doing better than I have in years." She looked surprised. Really? I nodded. Really. I finally learned to put myself first. It was a hard lesson, but I needed it. As the weeks turned into months, I started to rebuild my life. I joined a yoga class and met a group of women who became friends. I started hiking again, something I had loved but given up because I was always too busy or too tired. I even started dating. His name was Alan, a retired teacher with kind eyes and a gentle laugh. We met at a bookstore, both reaching for the same novel. He asked me to coffee and I said yes. It felt strange at first putting myself out there, allowing myself to be happy, but it also felt right. I thought about Stephanie often. I wondered how she was doing, if she was okay, if she ever thought about me. Part of me hoped she would reach out, not to apologize, but just to talk. But she never did. And slowly I made peace with that. Maybe we would reconcile someday. Maybe when she had children of her own and understood what it meant to sacrifice everything for someone you love. Or maybe we would not. Maybe this was the end of our story, and if it was, I would be okay, because I had finally learned that loving someone does not mean losing yourself. It does not mean accepting disrespect or mistreatment. It means setting boundaries, standing up for yourself, and knowing your worth. 6 months after the Cabo trip, it was December. The holidays were approaching and Phoenix was finally cooling down. I had not spoken to Stephanie since the day I blocked her number. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she and Kyle were still in the apartment, still struggling financially, still dealing with the fallout of everything that had happened. Part of me felt sad about that. I never wanted Stephanie to suffer. But another part of me knew that sometimes suffering is how we learn. Sometimes we have to hit rock bottom before we understand what really matters. I spent Thanksgiving with Alan and his family. It was strange at first being part of someone else's traditions, but his children welcomed me warmly. His daughter even pulled me aside and said, "My dad has not been this happy in years. Thank you for making him smile." Her words touched me deeply. For so long, my identity had been wrapped up in being Stephanie's mother, but now I was discovering other parts of myself. I was Rosa, the woman who loved hiking at sunrise. Rosa who laughed at terrible puns. Rosa who was learning to play guitar at 56 years old. I was more than just a mother. I was a whole person. Christmas came, and for the first time in 30 years, I did not buy Stephanie a gift. I did not send a card. I did not call. It felt strange, but also liberating. I spent Christmas morning with Alan drinking coffee and watching old movies. In the afternoon, we volunteered at a homeless shelter serving meals to people who had nowhere else to go. It was one of the most meaningful Christmases I had ever had. As the new year approached, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. Had I done the right thing? Yes. Would I do it again? Yes. Did it hurt every single day? But did I regret it? No. Because I had finally learned to value myself. I learned that boundaries are not cruel. They are necessary. I learned that giving endlessly without receiving respect or appreciation is not love. It is self-destruction. I learned that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from people who do not see your worth. And I learned that it is never too late to start over, to rebuild, to choose yourself. Stephanie taught me that lesson, though not in the way she intended. By pushing me away, by making me feel small and unimportant, she forced me to ask myself hard questions. Why was I accepting this treatment? Why was I allowing myself to be diminished? Why was I giving pieces of myself to someone who did not cherish them? The answers were uncomfortable. I had been so desperate to be needed, so afraid of being alone, that I had allowed myself to become a doormat. I had equated love with sacrifice, giving with worthiness. But real love is not one-sided. Real love is mutual respect, appreciation, and reciprocity. Real love does not make you feel small. It lifts you up. Stephanie and I did not have that kind of love. Maybe we never did. Maybe I had been so focused on being the perfect mother that I had failed to teach her how to be a good daughter. Or maybe she was just a person who valued material things more than relationships. Either way, I could not change her. I could only change myself. So I did. I became someone who knew her worth, someone who did not apologize for setting boundaries, someone who chose peace over people-pleasing. And in doing so, I found a kind of freedom I had never known before. Was I lonely sometimes? Yes. Did I miss Stephanie every day? But I also knew that I could not go back to the way things were. I could not go back to being the woman who gave everything and received nothing. I had to move forward, even if it meant moving forward alone. One evening in late December, I was sitting on my porch watching the sunset when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. Hello. There was a pause, then a familiar voice. Mom. It was Stephanie. My heart clenched. I had not heard her voice in 6 months. Hi, Stephanie, I said carefully. There was a long silence. Then she spoke, her voice thick with emotion. I just wanted to call and say I am sorry. For everything. For the text, for how I treated you, for taking you for granted. You did not deserve that. I closed my eyes, feeling tears prick at the corners. Thank you for saying that. Another pause. I have been seeing a therapist, she continued, trying to understand why I acted the way I did. And I realized I was so focused on impressing Kyle's family, on fitting into their world, that I forgot where I came from. I forgot what you sacrificed for me. I forgot that you are the reason I have anything at all. Her words were sincere, I could hear it. But I also knew that words were easy. Actions were what mattered. I appreciate you calling, I said, and I am glad you are working on yourself. But Stephanie, I need you to understand something. What happened was not just about one text or one trip. It was about years of feeling undervalued. It was about watching you change into someone I did not recognize. It was about realizing that I had given you everything and you did not even see me as family. I know, she whispered. I know, and I am so sorry. There was silence again. Then I asked the question that had been haunting me. Do you really want to rebuild our relationship? Or are you calling because you need something? Mom? No, she said quickly. I do not need anything. I just miss you. I miss my mom. I felt my resolve soften just a little. I miss you too, I admitted. But Stephanie, if we are going to have any kind of relationship going forward, things have to be different. You have to respect me. You have to value me. Not because of what I can give you, but because I am your mother and I love you. I understand, she said. And I want to try. I want to do better. I took a deep breath. Okay, we can try, but it will take time. I am not ready to just go back to the way things were. She agreed. I do not expect you to. I just want a chance to show you I have changed. We talked for a few more minutes carefully, like two people learning to trust each other again. When we hung up, I sat there in the fading light, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. Hope, fear, caution, love. I did not know if Stephanie and I would ever fully heal. I did not know if we could rebuild what had been broken, but I knew one thing for certain. I would never again sacrifice myself for someone who did not value me, not even my daughter. As I sat there watching the stars come out, I thought about everything I had been through. the pain, the anger, the heartbreak, the strength I had found in standing up for myself. And I realized something important. This story was not really about Stephanie. It was about me. It was about learning to love myself enough to demand respect. It was about understanding that I deserved better. It was about finding the courage to say no, to set boundaries, to choose my own well-being over someone else's comfort. It was about becoming the woman I was always meant to be. I do not know what the future holds for Stephanie and me. Maybe we will find our way back to each other. Maybe we will build a new kind of relationship, one based on mutual respect and genuine love. Or maybe we will not. Maybe the damage is too deep, the hurt too great. But either way, I will be okay, because I finally learned the most important lesson of all. Loving someone does not mean losing yourself. And that lesson, painful as it was, set me free. So let me ask you, have you ever had to set boundaries with someone you love, even when it hurt? Have you ever had to choose yourself over someone else's expectations? Drop a comment below and share your story. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss more stories about finding strength in difficult situations. And share this with someone who might need to hear it, someone who is struggling to stand up for themselves. Thank you for listening to my story. I know it was not easy to hear, but sometimes the hardest stories are the ones we need most. I hope wherever you are, whatever you are going through, you remember that you are worthy of respect, of love, of kindness. And if someone cannot give you that, even someone you love deeply, it is okay to walk away. It is okay to choose yourself. You deserve that. Take care of yourselves and remember, family is not just about blood. It is about respect, love, and showing up for each other. Until next time.